Okay, so this is going to be the Mixing 101 GarageBand project. And off the info page, you can grab this document. And the first thing that we are going to do is we have to open up GarageBand. So down in your dock, and again, mine looks different, you're looking for this icon, the guitar in front of the amplifier that says GarageBand. You're going to click on that, and it's going to this very first screen. Now, if you find that it opens up another session of some kind, GarageBand defaults to whatever was previously opened sometimes. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, New Session, and you'll get this. You're going to select Empty Project. Don't select any of these other templates. We'll get to those another time. You want Empty Project, select Choose, and you will see this screen pop up. Now, GarageBand is going to require us to select the first type of track. So for our purposes, we can pretty much choose any of these, but to keep it simple, I'm going to recommend you just go with the very first one here, Software Instrument, hit Create. Now this is going to put an electric piano, most likely, right there in our session work area. Leave that alone for just a moment. The first thing we want to do before we do anything else is we want to make sure that we save this properly to the data drive, just like the instructions say. And I'm going to let you go through those instructions because we already did this kind of thing with Pro Tools in the previous project. So consult those instructions in that video if you're not sure how to do that. But in GarageBand, it's the same basic idea. You go up to File, and you go to Save. The thing we need to do right now, though, before we do anything else, is make sure we have the audio stems. Now, they're probably already there. If they're not, the instructions do have a link for them. They're again going to be in your Downloads folder. So if you go back to your Finder and you go to Downloads, you should be able to find a folder, and this is the one we want, this Mixing 101 Juliet's Rescue. We're going to bring those in just a second. Before we do that, though, we need to make sure we've got the right signal flow going out of GarageBand. And in this case, we're not even using an interface. You're going to be plugging in, just like in the Pro Tools project, your headphones to the back of the computer. Now, in GarageBand, the way we do this is we go up to GarageBand and we go down to Preferences. Select Preferences and you get this window pop up. And under General, we're going to leave all this as it is. We're going to click over here on Audio MIDI Preferences. And it's this top one we're looking for. Now in my studio, I have, as I've mentioned, you have lots of different options than you have, and I have lots of different possibilities for how it works. I need to be using the PreSonus Fire Studio for these videos to work properly in my current studio setup, but you're going to want to use the option that says built-in output. Your list won't be nearly as long as this one, but you want built-in output. So you're going to select that. I need to keep mine on FireWire Studio. In any case, once you've got that set, and you can change the input device as well to built-in microphone if you wish, or just leave it at whatever it is. We're really only going to be dealing with output for this project. But in any case, click this little red X. That goes away. And now at least I know the sound coming out of the program, out of GarageBand, the DAW that I'm using for this project, I know I'll be able to hear it through my headphones. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to pull in all of my audio stems just like I did in Pro Tools. And the easiest way to do this is to place the Finder window with the stems on top of the GarageBand window that I have here. I'm going to select all of these, and I'm just going to drop them over here on top of my session. I can put this anywhere. And if you remember from the Pro Tools project, I want to have this ultimately right up at the front. But if for some reason you drop it on measure 5 like I just did, that's okay. So you have all of these now stems populating all of these tracks. So all of these different things right here. Okay. You can actually see my microphone is being picked up right now by backing vocal track number 2. Don't worry about that right now. That shouldn't affect what you're doing anyway, because you won't have a microphone plugged in. In any case, we need to move all of these over. Now, I can drag them by just clicking on the top one by one. I can also click on one and then shift-click down, just like I did in Pro Tools, and I can select everything. The biggest issue here is I got to get this all at the front, all lined up together. So the next thing I need to do is I need to get rid of this classic electric piano track. I don't absolutely have to do it. I could leave it there. It's not really hurting anything, but it is in the way. So I am going to click on it, and you'll see it changes color from a dark gray to a light gray when I click on it. So it's clicked on it here. I'm going to remove that track. I'm going to delete it. And that just kind of neatens everything up for me. Now you'll notice some of these meters are going off in mine. That's because I have a microphone hooked up. Don't worry about that right now. Most of what you're going to see right now in GarageBand anyway is going to look very, very familiar in terms of concept. It just is going to be different in terms of where we have things positioned. So for example, there's a lot of things that we have that are the same. We have a transport so that we can start and stop things. It's up here. We have a counter, which will show us where we are in the session. We have a click track right here, which can be turned on or off, and I highly recommend you turn it off. This over here is a master fader. There's lots of other buttons, and you are certainly welcome to press and see what they do, but for right now, I want you to be aware of the transport. I want you to be aware of the counter and this main informational area. And I want you to be aware of the click track. Now, GarageBand doesn't give us a separate mixer in the same way. Here's my panning, and I can move things to the left or to the right, just like I did in Pro Tools. Okay? I can go through and do all of my spatial placement the same way. And again, that should be the first thing you do. The next thing that you're going to do, just like in Pro Tools, is you're going to adjust levels. And your faders are here. Now, they're not vertical, they're horizontal, but the same exact idea of changing the level, moving it up or down. So after you do your spatial placement with your panning, you're going to want to take care of your levels with your faders over here. You have mute buttons and solo buttons, just like you did in Pro Tools. The little speaker with a line through it, slash through it like that, that's mute, and you'll see it turns the information from the stem gray. It will no longer play. The headphones is a solo button, and you'll see that's the only one currently that will play because all the others turned gray. You can do the same exact thing in different combinations and whatever you want to do. Now, GarageBand doesn't distinguish stereo tracks and mono tracks the way Pro Tools does. You'll recall the bass amp, when you brought these stems in to Pro Tools, there was actually a left and a right side. GarageBand puts that together and just makes it a single track. Does the same thing here with the overheads. You can see there's a little symbol here, though, that actually tells you that it's a stereo track. So don't worry about that so much, but just be aware of it. Same premise that we talked about in Pro Tools is going to apply here. Generally speaking, we like our drum kit and our percussion and our bass just straight up and down. You can certainly experiment with moving them around to see what you like. Remember, this is all about spatial relationships. And essentially at this point, we're kind of trying to just recreate what you did in Pro Tools, but just in a different piece of software. So now we've got the ability to take care of our panning, we've got the ability to take care of our levels, we've got the ability to isolate things, we've got the ability to combine things. So hopefully that's going to help you. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do, though, is you're going to need to be able to go in and do compression and EQ. I want you to do EQ first, just like you did in Pro Tools. So you're going to select a track. I'm going to use the kick right now. And you're going to go down to the bottom here, okay, this little editing area here. And towards the bottom, you'll see there's a little tab that you press, and you'll see that there is a series of plugins here. Now, GarageBand defaults these to the opposite order, and there's debate amongst engineers for different applications. And when I say applications, I don't mean software applications. I mean as far as what the project is. Are you mixing live? Are you mixing in a studio or whatnot? And there's different viewpoints as to whether or not you want to have the compressor first or the equalizer first. For now, I'd like you to put the equalizer first because I think it's easier to hear what it does. I think that there's a lot of value in being able to do both processes in either order. But I think early on like this, it's good to have the EQ first. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally run the mouse right over the name of the EQ, and I'm just going to lift it up on top, and you see now it's flipped around. So on that little highlighted one, if I want to highlight the compressor, by the way, it'll bring it up there, highlight the EQ, and now I press, all I did was click on it, and now I've got the EQ, and I can start to manipulate things. I've got all of these different EQ bands. This is very similar to what was in Pro Tools. I can grab a dot and I can move it. I can do all kinds, same kind of idea. If I want to go to presets, see this is manual up here, there's a little arrow here, and I've got submenus again. So this was for the kick drum, so drums, and now I've got all kinds of kicks. Now, again, I suggest using, or all kinds of drums in this case, I suggest using presets that reflect the notion that the source was recorded properly. So I'm not so sure that you want to do things like clean up kick in this case to start with. But there's a couple of these that are pretty good places to start. So for example, modern kick, it's a rock tune, so modern kick's not so bad if you want to try punchy, and just kind of see what you come up with. But start with the presets, that's a decent EQ curve. If you don't like the way it sounds, change something about it. Again, just like before, do you like the sound? You can solo it. Excuse me, that was a mute. You can solo it. Now you'd only hear the kick, and so on. Once you get an EQ for this one, you can go in and you can go to maybe your snare. I'm going to get rid of our compressor window here. You can go into the snare. Got to move that EQ again. Click on its control icon, and again, go into the presets, go to drums. Let's see here. We have natural snare. Let's try that. So you can listen to those in isolation, and you can solo them to decide which one you prefer. Again, you're seeing a meter here on my snare drum when I talk because that's the channel that I have selected, and I'm running my microphone back through this system. You won't see that meter going. Don't worry about it when you're playing. It won't affect you, but I do want to at least make you aware of why you're seeing that. Anyway, we have our EQ, and for compression, it's the same thing. Press the compressor's controls. Here's the compressor. Go up to manual. You see again, you've got presets. Find one that you feel like is pretty close, and you can go in and here, for example, let's see, snare. There we go, VCA snare. If you don't like these settings, you can go in and change them. Not a big deal. Okay? So there's all kinds of options, all kinds of different possibilities here. So you're going to go in, you're going to do your panning, your spatial placement, you're going to do your levels, then you're going to do your equalizer, then you're going to do your compressor, just like before. Experiment, see what you can come up with. And part of this is to try to get a sense of what are the advantages of Pro Tools, what are the advantages of GarageBand, which do you prefer. Sometimes it's going to depend on which work you're doing, which piece of software you want to use, and this is the beginning of exploring that as well. So, see what you can come up with, and I look forward to hearing your solution to this Mixing 101 in GarageBand project.